Being laid off 2 different times, definitely. And, layoffs are real right now. So I think those were some very hard days that I went through when, I worked for a developer that we developed many different apartment communities, and it was awesome when we were doing it. And then all of a sudden development stopped. And so I was laid off at that point. But I looked that I would not be a VP probably in where I'm at today if I wouldn't experience that layoff 9 years ago.
At 13, Holly Johnson was driving tractors on her family's Texas farm. From a town of 700 to vice president of marketing, she discovered that careers aren't ladders, but jungle gyms. In multifamily marketing leadership, she brings the same authentic human connection she values in her own life to how communities connect with residents. Today, she helps others find their shine, living by a philosophy learned in the fields, that even after the toughest seasons, something good always grows.
So when I was 14, I met my best friend and kind of my high school sweetheart, which became my husband. We were together for 26 years and we ended up separating and divorcing. I was heartbroken. I was devastated. How can someone know someone and be with someone for 26 years and not really know who somebody is?
Do you feel like you trust people?
I do have my guard up maybe a little bit more.
Holly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. A pleasure to be here.
I know. I'm excited. Our mutual friend Melanie introduced us, and I couldn't be more excited. And thank you for following along the journey. I know when we chatted yesterday, you were like, oh, I watched that video and this video. I'm like, okay, great. Somebody's actually watching it.
Yes, I love the content. I love seeing the journey that you guys are on and how you're doing this. So, I'm very honored that Melanie, put us in touch together. I loved working with her in the past and she's been one of my mentors. So it's a pleasure.
That's great. As many people have said the same thing. So I'm a huge Melanie fan.
Yes, me too.
So great. Yeah, you can see the RV. This is how it looks. We're not faking it. It's not AI generated.
Yes.
It's a real RV.
It's a real RV.
That.
Yes, I can confirm that. And a very nice wrap and everything. So exactly. I love it.
Perfect. I love it. As I normally start is a little bit about your background. I think, at least for me, I believe that a lot of my early years has influenced who I am. So I'd love to just learn a little bit about you, your early years, and how you think that may have influenced you, if at all.
Yeah, definitely. So I actually grew up in a very small town of 700 people.
Wow.
So in the panhandle of Texas. So I was born and raised on a farm. And so definitely formative years of my life. Growing up on a farm, you see the fruits of the labor of my grandfather and my father. My brother actually still farms today and has taken over kind of that family tradition. Lots of traditions, a small town with 700 people. Everybody knows everybody. So it's a true sense of community and building connection.
Actually 700, that's not being facetious.
No, that's not being facetious. I think actually now it's like 600. It's actually declining a little bit.
Oh, wow.
So my graduating class would have been 17. I ended up transferring in high school to play basketball to a larger school. So I had a huge transition change my sophomore year because then I transferred to a 4A school that had about 500 kids in my graduating class. So a huge transition there, but definitely growing up on a farm, my grandparents had peacocks and chickens and we had cattle and I was involved in 4-H and stock shows and, raised animals. And I think, really brought the nature side of me out, but also my worth ethic. I say today that my worth ethic is because of what I did on the farm and how I grew up. So I still miss my grandma's chickens right now, especially with these egg prices that we're seeing right now. But, that's the type of thing that we did. And, family traditions, my dad and mom still will call and say, well, we're eating dinner. And I'm like, you mean lunch, right? Because it's dinner and supper back at the farm, not lunch and dinner. So, but we sat around the table, had our suppers, and definitely was a formative years of my life growing up on the farm and, seeing the hard work that my dad and granddad, did. Actually, my granddad's 91 and he just, really stopped farming a few years ago. So he still helps out my brother sometimes on the farm, which is just amazing that he still gets around like that.
So I want to understand, I grew up in California in Silicon Valley where all the tech companies are, and wasn't necessarily a farm. And then I moved to India when I was 12, so also wasn't a farm. What is it actually like to live on a farm? When you're saying farm, it's a farm.
Yeah, so farmland. I mean, so we had corn and cotton fields that we were part of, as well as having a lot of animals. So, I grew up again raising pigs and sheeps every year to show at the stock show, and kind of, I would say sustainable, but that pig showed up on my breakfast table the next year, right? So farm to table, truly. Yeah. So I was able to experience something that a lot of people don't get to experience, and having that connection, having that family culture cultivated. I mean, and there was a lot of times that, the faith that my dad had, because being a farmer, you have to worry about Mother Nature, as y'all are experiencing here today, as in Dallas being so cold out, that
the crops
and the rain. I remember going out and doing some rain dances as kids saying, Lord, please bring us rain, because, that's what we needed to be able to, survive. Like I said, I look at it that the ethic that I instill today in me is because of what I learned on the farm. So, early mornings on going out to the chicken coop and picking the eggs with my grandma, and, learning to cook, through that. The local town was 20 miles away that you would go get something to eat. So it wasn't like we just ran to, Whataburger and we're just building our first Whataburger in the middle of town. So it's
for the
big
listeners,
deal.
we just had Whataburger for the first time.
Yes.
Me and David, and it was, I think, better than In-N-Out. So.
Yeah. So actually our hometown, our Plainview, the school I transferred to, the nearest town is actually just building the first Whataburger and Chick-fil-A as of today. So that just kind of shows you, how rural and small it is. So.
Okay. This is really helpful. So what I'm trying to understand here, when you're a kid, what do your chores look like living on the farm? So were you said you were actively working on the farm. What were the chores like? And then what was your daily routine like? When were you working on the farm with school and basketball and all this other stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So, we'd start early mornings to go out and take care of the pigs and take care of our sheep and cattle and things of that nature. So going and feeding the livestock. And, in the summertime, we had a field that my dad out by our house that we would actually hoe the cotton. There would be weeds that would grow up, so we would have to hoe the cotton. We actually did have a garden.
Sorry, hoe the cotton means you
pick the weeds.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So, we would also go out and we had a garden every year. So we would grow our own fruits and vegetables. So watermelon, cantaloupe, green beans, black-eyed peas, we would shell and put, can those up for, the rest of the winter months. And then of course, I was an athlete. So of course, doing my normal schools and sports as far as that goes. I did have a driver's license at the age of 13. I had a hardship license. So,
what is that?
So it's basically a license that you can get because I did have to work on the farm. So I drove the tractor. I, worked as far as that goes. So they would actually give us a license to be able to go help on the farm. Because it's not like you're on major highways and byways, you're just in on a dirt road. So they would give us a driver's license to be able to go commute around on the farm.
So can you drive an actual car? No.
Okay.
Oh, so it's a full driver's license,
driver's
not only
license.
operating in the, okay.
Yeah, full driver's license.
I didn't know this. Wow.
So it's kind of crazy. I drove myself to driver's ed, which I don't know, that was kind of ironic, but it's like irony of that, but.
Drive yourself back if you fail.
Drive it back, yeah. But, so.
Okay. So at the time when you were, 13 or 14, your grandfather was also working on the farm as well as your dad.
Yes. Yep. Yes,
okay.
Exactly.
And when you say your work ethic came from working on the farm, because I remember when my parents used to ask me to do things as a teenager, I would get so annoyed, right? Like you don't want to do the, go get me this, go get me that. It's like, you don't want to do that. Like chores are not fun. What was your sentiment back then when you had to do all this stuff? Was it fun, or was it?
I mean, I think we made it fun, but I think it was just part of our life. It was ingrained in us from when we were children, So I look at it that I don't think I knew a different way, because all the other kids in the area, I mean, most of the other kids, their parents are farmers, and, that was the way of life where I grew up. So it wasn't so different. I look at city kids now today and I'm like, they have no earthly idea, what we grew up. Even when I went to college, my roommate in college is like, you lived on a farm? Like, what do you mean? And so, I took her out there one holiday and she's like, oh my gosh, like you really did live on a farm.
Yeah, my co-founder likes to claim he grew up on a farm where it's kind of a farm, but kind of not. It's in Bellingham, Washington, and Bellingham has changed a lot. So I visited him. He definitely has horses and some of that, but I don't think it's like a true farm. So I'm just, it's really fascinating to me to hear a story like this.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So in terms of school, were you somebody who was super studious, or how did you look at school?
Yeah, I definitely was, really involved in school. I wanted to further my education even. I mean, if I would have stayed in my class of 17, I would have been valedictorian, a salutatorian. I did transfer, to the larger school, still graduated in the top, 1%. So definitely was part of the National Honor Society. So definitely school was something that I liked. I love to learn and further my education. I think that curiosity of living on the farm too, I was a kid that was always, I didn't watch a whole lot of TV. To be honest, we only got 3 stations for a long time. We had like the antenna style TV that, you just kind of got what you had. And so I was outdoors all the time and I was active and, moving around. So I think that curiosity, even in the classroom and in learning, was instilled in me, probably from the farm life.
What is your opinion on today's kids' upbringing?
It's a lot different. Definitely. I even look at my nephews who are, still back home, but, just the kids today definitely don't have that same drive and instillment. I mean, my brother definitely tries to, but I think, he kind of gets the attitude, Dad, do we have to, do we have to help you on the farm? So I definitely think kids are different today. And it's because of the technology, right? Yeah. The technology that they have in their hands that I think they see a different world out there where we didn't have that, to where we didn't know any different, where the kids today do know that there's a difference.
Your brother was younger?
My brother's older, 5 years older.
5 years older.
Yeah,
okay.
So just the two of us. So,
just the two of you. Did you guys fight a lot growing up?
Oh, yeah. Having an older brother, that's definitely, probably am a very strong-headed person because of him and some fights that we would get into, but always brotherly, sisterly love, you know, but definitely, I mean, he was my friend because my nearest neighbor was my grandparents that were 2 miles away on the farm. So it's not like you had like neighborhood kids that you necessarily, went to hang out with or, rode your bicycle. Actually, I still today don't ride a bike very well because we didn't grow up riding a bike.
You can't just ride to your neighbor's house.
Yeah, you just didn't ride to your neighbor's house, plus the dirt roads. So we rode motorized four-wheelers, three-wheelers, things of that nature. So, but yeah, my brother was like my best friend, to be honest. I mean, we grew up together. And even though there was an age, difference of 5 years, he was always there for me, even though he picked on me. But he definitely made me the strong, independent, probably person that I am today, for sure.
Yeah. And what about your mom? What did she do?
So my mom was a stay-at-home mom, but also she really helped my dad on the farm. I say it takes a village, to run a farm. She also did greenhouses. So she ran a greenhouse during the spring and summer months of plants that were grown. Her dad was also right around there. So both of my grandparents were just right in the same city that I grew up in. And he owned a tree nursery. And so was, very involved in flowers and plants and bushes and things like that. So she actually opened up greenhouses and did that side of the business.
So looking back, when you think about your childhood, what comes to mind in terms of was it particularly challenging for you, or did you have a good childhood? How would you describe it?
I definitely think I had a good childhood. I'm very blessed that I had the upbringing that I did. Like I said, very blessed that I had both of my set of grandparents within 7 miles of me. that I can say that, they were instilled in raising me as well. So I definitely feel like that's a blessing that I had. Even my aunts and uncles were right there. I mean, they're all still back there. I'm truly the one that's 6 hours away and moved off to the big city that they still think I'm crazy, that I moved away from, our small town.
Is your
area.
brother still?
Yes, my brother's still there too.
He's still there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
we'll get into that because I'm curious how you are now a VP of marketing in multifamily, which is interesting. Okay, cool. That's super helpful. So and you said you moved to a larger school. What year was this?
That was my sophomore year in high school.
High school.
Yes.
Okay. And why was that?
Mainly for sports. I really wanted to make a career in basketball at that time. I was in club ball AAU. My parents did travel around with me to play in different basketball tournaments and leagues, and truly thought I was going to play in college. I got hurt, and I did get a full ride to two different D2 schools, Division II, but actually chose not to take those scholarships, to probably my parents going, what?
Why was that?
I think at that time, I wanted a Division I school, and was just like, if I can't have that, I just don't know if this is the path I want to take. And they were in cities that probably weren't the most desirable that I wanted to live in. So I was like, I actually ended up going about 60 miles south of my hometown to Lubbock, to Texas Tech, and pursued my college career there.
So why did you not want to go to the D2 school? Is it because it wasn't D1, or is it because you didn't? I'm curious.
Yeah, I think I was on the path to probably play at a D1 school. And then when I got hurt and I had to do a D2, plus, to be honest, I think when I went and looked over colleges, basketball was their life at that point. Like, that's what they lived and breathed. And, I loved basketball, but I don't know if my heart's desire was to really just do that full time with full-time school. I was involved in a lot of things in high school. Like I said, the 4-H, FFA, sports, national honors. So I didn't just fully focus on sports. So I think that was hard to wrap my mind around, that I was just going to have to, play basketball, live, breathe it.
Why were you involved in so many different things? Was that by choice, or did your parents push you to do that?
No, I think it's by choice. I think, again, from a small town, you'll see that kids are very active in everything. Sports-wise, I ran cross country, I did track, played basketball. When you're in a small town, you kind of do it all, because there's not that big a pool of kids to play, so it's like you did everything being from a small town. Now, when I went to the larger school, I just solely focused on basketball as a sport. But I think in your early childhood and in my junior high years, I ended up doing everything because that's what everybody did.
So I'm curious to know, I also played basketball growing up.
Okay.
And in some ways, I felt that I played basketball because I'm tall.
Yeah.
I don't know if I was not tall, I don't know if I would have played basketball. It almost felt, I don't know, you're also tall,
Yes.
For people listening. Growing up, it almost felt like I used to get this question all the time, like, oh, you're tall, like, do you play basketball? Or do you must play basketball, or just these assumptions, which I get, right? But it actually used to be something that I didn't like. I remember now feeling like they assume or you must be good at basketball, right?
Mm-hmm.
They would just assume you're good. And then there would be this pressure on me to be like, oh, I should play basketball. I should be good at basketball.
Right.
Was playing basketball a choice by you?
Yes, it was a choice by me.
Okay.
I remember, I think I was in third grade, and I asked my dad, would you please build me a basketball goal with a little court so I could actually play? Because again, we had dirt, so I needed some concrete poured so I could actually have a little court. So I did love basketball. My cousin, 2 years younger than me, I look at her as my sister. And, she actually did go to the University of Oklahoma to play, but we were really close. She loved basketball. I love basketball. It was our thing that we, played together. She came over, I went over to her house. And I think, basketball, I loved it. I loved having the team sport. I loved the teamwork, the camaraderie that, it instilled in me from that. So I actually love basketball. So
Okay.
I still try to hoop it up a little today with the neighborhood kids. So
Nice. I like that.
every now and then I'll be like, okay, let me have that ball. Let me make sure I still got it.
I like it. That's awesome. Okay. And so going through, so you switched high schools in sophomore year. Did you always know that you wanted to go to college? Did your parents go to college?
My parents did not go to college.
Okay.
At that time, my aunt, my dad's sister had graduated college, and my brother. So I was the third graduate out of my family.
What was your parents' view on college growing up?
I don't think that they probably had the opportunity to, but for us, I think that they wanted us to, to have that education that they didn't have the opportunity to have. So I definitely, and I was so blessed that even though I didn't take that scholarship, my parents and grandparents paid for 100% of my college. So I think that was something that my parents early on said, hey, we want our kids to go to college. We want to find this path for them to be able to take that. They didn't have that opportunity to. So, and maybe they'll want to. I think my dad wanted to follow in his dad's footsteps and, farm and take over some of the farm. So,
are your brother and you similar or different?
Very different. Very different.
How are you guys different?
Oh, that's a good one. But I think I don't know, maybe we are more similar. But I mean, I think in personality wise, he's probably, we're both similar in being very high strung and very driven, because I think, again, that's our background. But I do think that, he's a pilot, he's a private pilot. He also farms. So he does a lot of different entrepreneur, even adventures there that I probably am a little bit more on the not saying I'm not a risk taker, but I like the more consistent path as far as that goes. So I would say that's probably where we're a little different, where he's done so many different things in his life. And, I got in multifamily in college and have just made it my career. And I haven't done, my brother's probably had 6 or 7 different opportunities that he's pursued and been very successful at all. So.
Okay, that's great. So what did you study in college?
I studied marketing and public relations. So I'm actually one that's doing my degree.
I know, that's rare.
I know, right?
Super rare. Why did you choose marketing at the time?
I think I love to talk. So the PR side of it is because I'm very talkative. I liked to talk, and then I love marketing. I loved always looking at different things and ads and, learning about people. And I think marketing is a people business that you can learn people's drive as far as that goes, what they like to do, and kind of, how do I say?
The psychology of
the psychology behind it, I would say. Yeah. And just, really, selling a product, and, making it desirable to them. So it really sparked me to kind of go into that path. So
you went to school for marketing, and then in college you found multifamily.
Yes, it was actually my, kind of first job. It was right across from campus at the time, and got a leasing job. I thought it was great because I didn't have to work past, 6 o'clock. And, all my other friends were in the restaurant and service world having to work these late hours, and, went across after school. I did have to work the weekends, but that didn't, bother me. Plus, it was a good way to make some good money. Especially during the leasing turn of, it was a 700 unit property. So it was a large property right across from campus. So, wow. It was a perfect first job out of the gate, and loved the sales aspect of it, loved meeting all the different people. So it was definitely something that I knew when I was in it. I was like, oh, this may be for me.
Oh, you did? You thought that back then?
Yeah. I did.
Oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So just because of the interaction with people, the human element, hanging, showing people, yeah. Because in some ways, or not in some ways, in reality, the biggest purchasing decision people make is where they're going to live.
Their home, yeah.
So you have the ability as a leasing consultant or agent to help influence their biggest purchasing decision all year.
Exactly. And I think I love the different day to day always. It was never the same, especially having a 700 unit property. It was never the same type of day. And I'm not one that likes the same exact rhythm every day. It's like, okay, let me change this up, and what's going to happen today? And, finding people their home. We worked a lot with the admissions department, with people that were maybe it was their first time even coming into the US and going to school there and, really explaining to them, how it worked and just the ins and outs of the apartment living. So I absolutely loved it. I was very blessed to have also, I think, a wonderful boss at that time that really kind of saw what I probably didn't even see in myself at that time and said, I really think that this is for you. And this is, and at that time it was like, what's that? Is that even a career path that I take, But he really was one that I think molded me into saying, hey, you have the potential to make this a career if you would want.
So what did you think? Like, would you have considered yourself somebody who is an ambitious person? I know you said you had drive and you're driven, which I think could be the same as ambition, but also could be different. Like, what was your self view at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think I wanted to go and do the best I could and prove that, I could be out on my own and that I could, make my own living. And so I am very, I think, ambitious in that standpoint, that I didn't, just fall into a pattern of what my family has always done, So I do think I'm ambitious and, have that drive. I think it is the same, very driven as far as that goes. So
what do you feel like when you're not doing something like or accomplishing something?
I don't have that very often because I think I'm always on the go. Yeah. I mean, my friends would say, Holly's calendar is always packed. You better get on it a month ahead of time, because I do always, and I'm involved in a lot of different activities, even still today. And I was back then, I was in a sorority. I volunteered back then for a reading group for children. I worked in the apartment industry. So I gave back to the Ronald McDonald House back then. So I would say I was always busy in college, but even still today, I'm like that. And I think I don't sit very well at all. So
why do you think that is? Like, what if you were on an island, let's say you were put on an island without your phone for 3 days, what would day 3 look like for you internally?
I think without my phone, I'd still be okay, because I'd probably be exploring what the island has to offer and going and exploring and looking around. And again,
what if you just had
nature.
to sit?
If I just had to sit, I'd go crazy.
3 hours.
I don't know if I could do it. It would be very hard for me. Yeah. And it's something I'm working on, to not be so busy and have that busyness about me. But I think that the way the world is today, it's even worse, in our busyness of, like you said, being on your phone or social media or this. So.
Yeah. I think it makes it so much worse, right? Because our brain is literally, due to neuroplasticity, changing to respond to like short dopamine hits with reels and Instagram stories and this, and we're deprogramming ourselves to just like have long attention spans and just sit. You strike me as somebody that's pretty positive. Are you an optimist?
Yes, definitely.
You are an optimist.
Always a positive side. Okay. I try to always look at like the positive side of any circumstance, right? Even in my worst days, going, okay, why is this, and what can I make the best of this, even though it may be a bad circumstance. So yes.
That was all. You were always like that, even when you were younger.
I think I was always a positive person. It's just part of my personality, the way I think I was truly born. I don't know if there was anything that really made me that positive. I just think I had a good outlook on life, and I still do, and think, hey, because you have a choice, right? We have a choice in life, whether we can be positive or whether we can be negative. And I think for myself, I'm like, why not choose the positive? We're surrounded by so much negativity anyway. Why not go ahead and just be that positive person that puts that light out for others? Because I always look at it too, like, who can I impact today and make a positive change in their life by just my positive behavior and being that light to someone else that maybe does have darkness in their life that needs that extra little spark. So, yeah.
One of my favorite mental heuristics is to like live life as if it's rigged in your favor. And I feel like that's just a small little thing where it's like, wow, if you look at every circumstance or event as that it's actually rigged in your favor, you just change your internal psychology, which I think is super important, but often harder to put in practice. I think that so you said you think you were born, you said you think you were born
positive,
optimistic. That's something that I was just talking to somebody about today, actually, is I just feel like some people ruminate more. I don't know if it's a genetic thing or not, but in some ways it's hard to be optimistic because humans are designed to be safe. We're not designed necessarily to be happy. We're designed to survive and then procreate and continue on. And if you're designed to be safe, you are then designed to think about things that can harm you, which are usually negative thoughts. So yeah, I just find that interesting because I think I'm somebody that definitely thinks a lot. And I think because I think a lot, it's not always positive, and I analyze a lot. So it's challenging. But for example, my brother is just super optimistic all the time. And in some ways very present. Would you consider yourself somebody who's present?
Yeah, always present in the moment. Even just, I think we have to be present, especially in this day and age, and listen, stop, listen to others as well. And I think that helps me be present in the listening and trying to understand where someone's coming from. Because most of the time, all we're doing is thinking about the next thing we're going to say versus truly pausing and letting someone get out their full thoughts. And so I definitely think I try to most of the time be present in where I'm at. Don't be distracted by, if you go out to eat with me, I'm going to put away my phone. I'm going to try to be present in that moment.
Oh, wow. You do that?
Yes. And I
think religiously?
I do, because I think that probably is back to the suppers around the table.
That's a great habit.
We were ones that, we didn't have phones back then, but also we were present in the moment as kids and as a family. So I do think that, it's a value that I want to instill and just always have that people know that, hey, if you're going to talk to me, I'm going to not be distracted and, give them that time that I would want them to give me back. I hate when I see people across in a restaurant and all they're doing is they're not even having a conversation with each other. They're just texting or on their phone looking and scrolling. And I'm like, wow, we're losing the sense of that connection, the human connection that's so important because we're behind these screens all day. So yeah, I do think that being present is a huge part of who I try to be and show others how to be like that too.
So you're in college, you're working as a leasing agent part-time. What happens next? What's your first job?
So actually full-time. Well, I in college, what brought me to the big city here was the PGA Tour. I had an opportunity to come and work for the PGA Tour for the Byron Nelson when Byron was actually still alive, which was an amazing man who inspired me tremendously.
Why did he inspire you quite a bit?
Yes, definitely. I was a media major, right? So I got to work in the media center, and I actually got to go and interview Byron at his house with Peggy, his wife.
Wow.
And
what was that like?
It was an amazing experience, and just to hear the nuggets of his life. And, he was a hard worker. He, wanted to always practice golf and do the best he could, but he also had a human component about him. That's why I always look at PGA players that would come to the Byron Nelson. It might have been the best tournament that they could play in, but huge golfers came to that tournament because of Byron and how he brought a human element to a golf game. And he cared about people. He could tell stories about different people throughout his career and life that impacted him and just made connections with you that made you feel so important. Even me as a 20-year-old sitting in his house, I'll never forget the feelings that he made me have.
Do you remember feeling that?
Yes. It was a 3-hour interview that I got to be a part of, but he wanted me to be seen, be known, took pictures with us, just made a connection. And I still remember the feeling that I had saying, I want to make that feeling to others too, because he just had a presence about him that was just beautiful. And, I'll never forget even seeing golfers when they were coming off the course. They would go up. He would just speak into them and just tell them something personal about their game or about that. And it wasn't just like, oh, hi, thanks for playing. It was so personal. And he was just a wonderful man. And so I was honored to be able to, it was an internship my last year in college that I actually took to work for the PGA. That brought me to Dallas. And so ended up having to go back to Lubbock for 6 months to graduate, and then ended up getting in leasing then after that. So it was still started with Amley Residential, and, started as a leasing manager because I'd already kind of done leasing. So started as a leasing manager with Amley, who had a great foundation for me to expand from the student housing world, because definitely conventional is a little different than the student housing world.
Wow, that's so cool that you remember that so clearly.
Yes.
Outside of Byron, who else comes to mind as role models in your life?
Well, I think the person that referred us together is Melanie French. I had the privilege of working for her about 12 years ago, and she was amazing. I think she saw things in me that I didn't see in myself, and, really pulled those talents and, inspired me to even be better than what I thought I could. At that time, I went through several transitions, and, she said, you could, be a VP and look at where I am today. So, I truly look at Melanie as one of those mentors for me, for sure, that inspired me.
Yeah, I'm just so, you listened to Melanie's episode,
Yes.
right? I don't know if you probably didn't see my face too much because it was on her, but I was just like, oh my God, I'm like so inspired by it. Like, because I run a tech company. I'm not on the property management side, but I was like, wow, like I just remember leaving that conversation being like, this is so, like, what the opportunity we have to impact these people in this industry is so cool. So I can't imagine what it feels like working with her directly. We actually went to their office a couple days ago and we're working with them and presented to them. And it's just amazing how she's able to like command a room, be in the details of like we were piloting with them. She's so in the weeds, knows it, but just makes everybody feel so welcome. And when I look at that, I just like look at it and I'm like, I feel like that's like, it would kind of drain me because it requires a lot of bandwidth, right? Like to show up that empathetically and fully for everybody. It's tiring, isn't it? Like,
yeah, no matter. I saw Melanie from the groundskeeper to the CO. She did not change. She got on people's level. She spoke to everyone. She made people, as Byron, feel comfortable, to have that connection, to show that they mattered no matter what their job role was. So, and, I try to do that today as well, learning from them to go, okay, how can I make that connection with people? How can I make people feel that they are valued?
Yeah. But I feel like you also have a very similar like energy, I guess, or like aura about you where you do make people feel comfortable. It's easy to talk to. So I can imagine how that plays out at work.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's where, me and Melanie were a lot alike. I was like, I want to be Melanie, so I do feel like we have some of those same personality traits. And I think that's what she inspired me so much, during those years that I worked for her because of that. So
that's great. So for folks listening, as I've said many times and what I really believe, just this industry is so cool to me coming from, the outside. I've been in the industry for 4 years now, but seeing how you can, regardless of your background, start as a leasing agent and be a VP of marketing or marketing leader or CMO or whatever it is, an executive, is really cool. If you were to like impart some wisdom for folks that are listening that are maybe leasing agents or regional managers and want to work their way up, what would that wisdom look like?
I think that I would tell them, to learn from all different levels. So, to understand the business from the eyes of the maintenance, from the resident, from their VP, because I truly think that the way that we can grow and be that next level is to understand the human connection, again, going back to the connection, but understand that human connection of, and go above and beyond. Go and, want to learn from that next level up. So if you're a leasing agent that inspires to be the next step, go and try to learn from that assistant manager or that community manager. But I also say in multifamily, it's somewhat now, it's not necessarily a ladder. You don't have to be an assistant to be a manager. I say that's more of a jungle gym when I talk to people, because now there's so many different opportunities. There's resident experiences. There's, even you can go on the vendors, still in multifamily, but move over to the vendor side of it. If you're a good salesperson, like I personally was in leasing my whole career until I was a corporate marketing. So I never really was an assistant or manager. And I tell that story to inspiring people. They're like, well, I don't really want to go, be an assistant. Well, you don't have to be anymore. There's that jungle gym that you can go a different way and not have to follow necessarily a ladder career. And I think that's showing that knowledge of being well-rounded, if that makes sense. So.
Absolutely. That's so cool you said that. I was talking to Danielle from Rangewater, and we were talking about the exact same thing. I think it's actually in some ways I framed the question incorrectly, but in some ways it's dangerous to think that way, because then you feel like in order to get to some step, there's some preceding step that you need to take. And there's no fixed pattern or anything like that you can take. And I think that's right. It's a jungle gym, and you can sidestep, and you can step diagonally, or you can step up or down, or, go on the other side to be on the vendor side. And in some ways that may lead you to exactly where you wanted to be anyway, or allow you to skip some steps.
Exactly. And so I tell a lot of people that, because I think some people starting in the industry, they think I have to do this ladder, and they don't. They can, and there's so many more opportunities with centralization these days that are happening that, if they have a passion to do something different, they can, do something like that. They don't have to follow in this exact track that probably 20 years ago we saw it being, where you followed from a leasing to an assistant to a manager, where these days I don't think it so much is.
So I want to talk about the more challenging parts of your career. I know you're an optimist, but put your pessimist hat on. And tell us a little bit about what were some of the challenges that you've had over the years, some of the harder moments.
Yeah, I think being laid off 2 different times, definitely. And, layoffs are real right now. I mean, you look at our LinkedIn pages, especially in multifamily, with some mergers and some things happening in our space and even in other spaces. So I think those were some very hard days that I went through when, I worked for a developer that we developed many different apartment communities, and it was awesome when we were doing it. And then all of a sudden, development stopped. And so I was laid off at that point. And it was very hard because I knew I had done a good job, but in a way there just wasn't a further opportunity for me. In the same way, there was some restructuring going on in the second layoff, and I chose to kind of not be part of that restructure and said, I'm going to go and, pursue something else. So I think those were hard days for me, especially the latter one, because I thought my team was doing good. I thought we were making good moves. And I was like, I just felt blindsided almost, which understood why the restructure had to happen. But it was so hard because they disseminated my whole team. They all had to either choose a different role in the company or choose to leave. So that was really hard for me. To lose the team that I had built, as well as myself internally reflecting, was it something I did versus just the restructure? So
for, you referenced, we're shooting this February 2025. Recently there was a big layoff with the rent up folks. What would you advise anybody who is going through something like this, or, potentially may go through something like this in the future? How would you advise them to process?
Well, first of all, I'd say don't take it personal, although it does feel so personal when it happens to you. But also know that good things will come from something bad that you feel like happened. Because I look at both of those, that I had huge career moves after that. And yes, it did take some time, and I had to do a lot of processing and reflection during that time. But I looked that I would not be a VP probably in where I'm at today if I wouldn't experience that layoff 9 years ago. And so I think just letting them have that, there is hope out there. There is a job for you that you're going to find that's even going to be better. And when you can go back and look back and go, wow, it was a move I needed to happen. Unfortunately, the way the cards, fell was not ideal, but there will be something always good.
Yeah. I know it's not financially feasible for many people, but Sam Altman, who's the founder of OpenAI, ChatGPT and all this stuff, talks about how taking a year off was one of the most influential things he's ever done. Of course, you have to be in a financial position to do that. But if I were to answer the question myself, I think to add to that, I think it's also like you don't need to rush into something. If you can, you shouldn't rush into something new, right? I think there's probably this urgency of wanting to find a job and rush into something. But I feel like you need a process and really think, because in many ways you hear stories of people in hindsight looking at things like this and being like, oh, that was the best thing that ever happened to me because I found this new role, because I started this company, because I changed industries. And I think if it's possible for you financially, it's so important to just pause, reflect, process, and really think about whether this is actually an opportunity in disguise.
Yeah, I agree. And I think a lot of times why we do rush is because we, especially I feel like in multifamily, find our purpose through our work. And that's maybe where you have to do some soul searching and find your purpose yourself versus through your work. Look at it the lens of what makes Holly thrive, what makes Holly shine. Because I think when you start self-reflecting, looking at values, that's only going to help you be a better person for the next company, wherever you land, to become.
Outside of work, where do you find your purpose?
So I'm very active in my church family. And I also volunteer at a place called the House of Shine. So I find a lot of purpose there. So House of Shine is a nonprofit organization that grows leaders from the age of 5 to 95. Wow. So it's about building community and truly finding your purpose and your value. So I spend a lot of time there. Shine stands for finding your strengths, going through your hobbies. What hobbies do you really enjoy? What are your interests and your irritants? What are needs? Because we all have those needs. And then what experiences do you want to have? So that's kind of the Shine framework. And I think when you look at that, you really can apply that to all facets of life. And so I spend a lot of time, I'm an ambassador as part of that organization, and really like to grow our future leaders. We work with what's called the Leader Institution, and it's an internship for high school students, and, really showing them and instilling in them that, they can be whatever they want to be, and finding their purpose early in life. I wish I would have had that when I was, 16 and 17, where these students are, because, I feel like I'm really finding some of my purpose now in my 40s. I had some major life changes about 5 years ago that I think had to do a lot of soul searching and digging to find even that further purpose in my personal life. So,
what happened 5 years ago?
So when I was 14, I met my best friend and kind of my high school sweetheart, which became my husband. And we were together for 26 years, and we ended up separating and divorcing. And so, I think when you're with somebody from when you're 14, I was right at 40 when we divorced. And so 26 years of my life, that's the person that I knew. And so finding that purpose without him and kind of what the meaning of my life was then. So that was it's been some hard years for sure. But I do think that surrounding myself with the positivity, knowing that something good is going to come from this still, and that, God does have a plan for what I went through and the struggles that I had, because, you look at life and, in your 20s, you're living life, right? It's all good. In the 30s, you might start kind of reflecting, like going, oh man. And then I think in the 40s, you really start digging into the purpose of why you're living your life. Like, my life may be halfway over. Like, what do I want to do to fulfill those needs in me? So that's what happened. But again, overcoming that through, being involved in, like I said, my church family and through the House of Shine. So
why did you guys end up divorcing?
There was a lot of things that he really never was truly honest on, of things that he had went through his childhood. He was abandoned by his father when he was just a child, and really acted like to me that he never really wanted to know his dad, but really there was that void that he was always trying to fill. And I feel that he just really couldn't make some overcomings of that. He had some addictions that we, had throughout our marriage that, kept thinking it would get better and then it wouldn't. And I think just, this is his story, but the lies and deception that I felt through it when I found out the real truth about what he was and who he was, I was heartbroken. I was devastated. To be honest, I was shocked. I was like, how can someone know someone and be with someone for 26 years and not really know who somebody is? But, we all put on that mask sometimes. And, COVID kind of took off the mask. It was actually during the COVID time that he told me some truths, and it was very shocking to me. And so I think experiencing that, we didn't end on, bad terms. I still wish him very well. I still, love him and wish him the best, but knowing that I couldn't keep putting myself through that same cycle of insanity, I would say. So, sorry, this is my first time kind of talking about this, so I'm trying to.
No, it's okay. Do you feel like you trust people now?
I do still trust people. I do think probably I have my guard up a little bit more sometimes with people, or I dig deeper than probably I did beforehand. I think sometimes we can just look at so much surface. We're so surface level friendships these days and what people are going through. Oh, okay. We just kind of brush it off. To really, again, like I mentioned earlier, like to sit down, to have that conversation, to truly listen to somebody. Because as I reflect back, I'm like, man, that was 5 years ago. He did, and I was, putting the pieces together, but the pieces had already fell apart too far to recover from those. But I do feel that I do have my guard up maybe a little bit more than probably I did in the past. But I still think just my nature is to trust people and know that I would hope that people don't want to just hurt people, but hurting people hurt people. That's the problem. When someone's hurt, they don't mean to, but they will pass that hurt off to other people. But you know what? Healing people, once you've healed from it, healing people heal people. So when I'm on the other side of it now, to where I want to help that person going through the same thing that I just went through, to know that, hey, there's hope on this other side. Yeah, you may be in the pits of hell right now, but again, something good is going to happen from the circumstance that you went through. You're going to be stronger. You're going to have more resilience. You're going to be able to overcome things that you never dreamed you would overcome. So,
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard. I can't imagine, like, 26 years is a long time. Everything changed quite a bit.
yes. Yeah, I mean, I look at it that, and I think that's, why I did the soul searching that I've done in the last few years to say, okay, who is Holly just as Holly, right? Because I always did have him right there with me too. So it was kind of Holly and Jared versus who is just Holly and what do I value and what do I want in life versus, and so I would say anybody listening to this that doesn't have their own purpose in life, that you need to find that. You can't let somebody else be part of your purpose. They can be they just don't need to be your sole purpose because no one's ever guaranteed tomorrow. Plus, you never know what circumstance may happen that maybe will tear you apart.
Thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah.
We'll move to a different segment. Thank you, though. What do you think about, you've been in the industry for so long. Where are we going here with technology, with AI? Like, so much has changed in the last 2.5, 3 years with ChatGPT and all this. Like, what does it look like in the next 5 years from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree, with the AI world, with even self-guided tours. I mean, truly, I look back when we were like getting rid of the apartment guide. It was a big, thick, print ads were still it. And we were like, there's no way this internet's going to get rid of this advertising. And truly, I mean, not saying leasing agents are not going to have a job. I just think they're going to be repurposed. But I do feel like with AI and some of the technology that we have today that it is going to shift the way that we lease apartments, the way that the customer interacts. I mean, because again, we're glued to technology and phones. So people are utilizing those technologies just to make their life simpler. I do think there's always going to be a human component to a living aspect, but I do think we will be repurposing those jobs to more customer focused things of that nature versus really maybe the sales side of it. Because really, who likes to be sold to, right? So none of us like to be sold to. So it's like using the AI components to sell as well as the self-guided. I think you're going to see more of that take off in our space as the evolution happens. So I think leasing will change, but there's always going to be that human need, I feel like, in our business.
Do you feel like properties will it be in 5 years, will it be more common? It probably will be more common, but how common do you think it'll be in 5 years to have properties that are peopleless with nobody in the property?
Oh, yeah. I think we're going to see more and more of that. I mean, you go to any conference right now, centralization is the main topic, AI and centralization, right? So I do agree that we'll see less humans maybe inside leasing offices. Maybe they have to go to, we have a building in, 4 buildings and we run it in one, so I do see more of that centralization taking place to where they're either self-guiding or they have to go to another space to be able to have somebody go. But I think we'll see more and more self-guided because that's meeting people where they're at. I mean, look at how we buy cars now. Carvana, you drop a car right in front of your front door and you buy it online. So I do see more and more of.
Yeah. And I think like meeting people where they're at is the key phrase, right? The reality is some people actually may want to talk on the phone, meet a leasing agent, have that, it sounds like human interaction is never really going to go away, but have that different kind of interaction. So I think it's really important to be able to provide all aspects of the way somebody wants to be communicated with and have that human engagement and interaction as part of it. Because at the end of the day, as much as we like to think, in my opinion, that we make decisions rationally, more often than not, it's emotionally, right? And if you're making a decision emotionally, humans are the best means to influence emotion today.
Exactly.
Hopefully AI is not better at influencing emotions in the future, but humans and human connection and all of that is the best way to influence emotions. So I very much agree.
I mean, I've always said that people don't lease an apartment because of an apartment. They lease it because of the person there half the time, because they made a connection with that person. And they're like, hey, I like the way that she treated me and took care of me. And there's that trust, that credibility, that rapport that's why I still think there will be some type of human connection. But, I look at my nephews, that are in high school now, and I don't know. I mean, when that generation, they're just a few years from leasing an apartment on their own, which is kind of scary. But I do feel that it's a new wave coming in with the new generation that they're not going to really care for that human touch anymore because they haven't been raised with as much human touch as what we have. They've been online. They've been on the screen. They haven't had as much emotional attachment through human connection. It has been through technology versus the human.
I have to ask you, where do you feel like tech companies are not investing in AI tooling where they should be, right? We have a lot of, top of funnel lead nurture products. We have, collections products and things like that. Like where, from your perspective and vantage point, are companies not investing in where there's real problem?
Yeah, I think some of that is like as people are going to tour an apartment to really have that type of technology, an AI technology, talk to somebody when they're on those type of tours, So if they are doing a self-guided tour, to really have an AI communicate with them during that process, even during the application process. I think you get a lot of the same questions when people are applying for an apartment, like what's the process or what's my status of my application? You get those questions all the time. So I don't think there's that advancement yet in AI. Do I think it's coming? Yes. But I do think it's more on, kind of that full circle because I think, we're already seeing it, like you said, in the delinquency side and the renewal and the maintenance side of it. But I think there is that stopgap from when you get them in the door AI to when they move in. I think that's the sweet spot that we're missing right now from AI.
And you think, okay, and there's still mundane process in that sweet spot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, Holly, thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you too. And I actually have a little shine token for you. I talked about the House of Shine.
Wow.
It's a spread shine. It has, the shine framework.
We'll show it to the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just wrote here that you shine because of your curiosity and your connection with people, your desire to learn from others and enrich your life and inspire those around you.
That's so nice. Thank you.
Yes. So keep that
Really
token,
appreciate it.
Or you can pass it off to somebody else as well. But I just want to tell you that you truly do shine. I think it's amazing what you're doing in this journey that you guys are on. And I wish you the best. And hopefully the weather will get a little warmer for you.
This is so nice. Thank you. I genuinely appreciate this.
Yes, of course.
Thanks, Holly.
Thank you.